In Kenya, rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines on the papers. It is the 7th of October 2025, and this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce. Let's start with The Nation. On the front page, the elephant in the room, why faith threw in the towel. Now, a court has blocked operations by the task force appointed on August 25th. Her appointment to a government team on compensation for victims of state excesses sparked controversy. Now, LSK President Faith Odhiambo has resigned from her position as vice chairperson of the panel, citing stalled progress, court action, and detractors. We'll take a look at that on page 6. Now, on page 4, where is Njagi? In August last year, after anti-government protests, activist Bob Njagi was seized from a matatu by security agents and tortured for a month in captivity. Now, Njagi and his Kenyan colleague Nicholas Oyo have gone missing in Uganda, with a court told they are being detained by the military. That story is augmented for you on page 4. Marriage is not a 50-50 assets affair. Top court rules. That story is augmented for you on page 14. And on page 12 this morning in Matters Health, looming shortage of life-saving drugs. The Kenya Pharmaceuticals Distributors Association has warned of imminent crisis, citing regulatory changes that could affect the import of essential medicine. That story is on page 12. And on politics this morning on page 2 and page 3, why Moi picked Uhuru over Raila, Mudavadi, Kalonzo, and Saitoti. Now, in his book, At the Ready, former Minister Masden Madoka writes about his front row seat in the 2002 Moi succession intrigues. And on page 10, MPs set condition for sale of the Kenya pipeline. If it's privatized, Kenya Pipeline Company will not import or sell petroleum products without approval from the National Assembly. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Let's get up close and candid with The Nation on page 2. Why Moi picked Uhuru over Raila, Mudavadi, and Kalonzo. Second president's endorsement of his preferred successor triggered rebellion within KANU, leading to defections by key figures who formed LDP and joined forces with the National Alliance of Kenya under NAC. Now, in the last of our exclusive three-part serialization of At the Ready, Masden Madoka, an influential figure in President Daniel Arap Moi's administration, writes about his front row seat in the 2002 succession intrigues that led to the unexpected implosion of KANU as Mwai Kibaki's stray-eyed NAC ushered in a new era. That is what The Nation says on page 2. Let's delve into that a little bit. As the 2002 general election approached, there was a heated political debate around constitutional reforms and succession of President Daniel Arap Moi. He had brought opposition leader Raila Odinga into his cabinet as energy minister, replacing Francis Masakalia, who was dropped, and Dr. Adu Awiti, who was the planning minister then. There seemed to be a spectacle being built around Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of the first president of Kenya, after his surprise nomination to parliament and subsequent appointment as local government minister. You want to catch up with that on page 2. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Where are our sons? Cry families of Bob Njagi and Oyo after the abduction in Uganda. Now, Kenya High Commission in Kampala asks Uganda Foreign Ministry to assist in tracing missing individuals. LSK and rights groups express concern over increasing cases of abductions by security agencies in East Africa. They vanish on the road between rallies, at petrol stations, or after a book launch seized by armed men in plain clothes, bundled into unmarked vehicles and spirited to detention. Now, what once felt like isolated incidents have turned into a pattern across East Africa. Activists, opposition politicians, and journalists abducted by security agents in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and in some cases spirited across borders. This pattern, human rights groups warn, is no accident. It is a wave of transborder repression that blurs national boundaries and exposes a growing willingness by governments and security services in the region to cooperate quietly or overtly to silence critics and dissidents. You want to catch up with that story on page 4. On page 5 this morning, Kangata's blueprint for wooing investors, successful applicants to get a renewable 30-year lease. Now, the county government plans to industrialize Murang'a moves into top gear. Now, Governor Irungu Kangata has invited investors to Murang'a as plans to industrialize the county move in high gear. He urged manufacturers to build factories in the county and create employment opportunities for young people. The governor said his administration had already allocated land for the project in a specific location with favorable prices and application procedures. Dr. Kangata said to prevent investors from using the land for speculation purposes, they will be required to start development projects within 6 months of getting an allotment. He said that the phase of one of the projects should be completed within a year. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Let's take a look at page 6. Why Faith quit Ruto team on police violence payout. Now, compensation for victims. The High Court suspended the panel's operations, effectively freezing its 120-day mandate. The Law Society of Kenya president cites stalled progress and legal challenges. Now, the Law Society of Kenya, LSK, from the compensation of victims morning on matters (2027) election the ODM secretary presentation made up of youth line courts funded by initiative seeks to reconnect the government with young voters disillusioned by unmet promises. Now, President William Ruto's administration yesterday unveiled a 5 billion youth empowerment initiative aimed at tackling unemployment and reigniting his connection with young voters ahead of the 2027 general election. Ruto dispatched his capital secretaries, or PSS, to all 47 counties for town hall meetings with Gen Zs, who have become a crucial voting bloc in the run-up to the 2027 presidential race. You want to catch up with that story on page 8. Move on and take a look at page 10. Legislators set conditions for sale of Kenya pipeline. Proceeds sale to be used in infrastructure development, payment of pending bills. MPs have made various recommendations to guide privatization, including limiting share purchase. You want to catch up with that story on page 10. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Looming drugs crisis triggers fear. Now, Pharmacy and Poisons Board dismisses allegations and describes the report as deceptive. Distributors Association claims a supply of 21,000 essential drugs could be disrupted in the next 2 weeks. Now, the Kenya Pharmaceuticals Distributors Association has warned of the potential drug crisis in the country in the next 2 weeks. The shortage has been attributed to regulatory changes that restrict access to essential medicines. New regulations were put in place by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, which the distributors say were implemented haphazardly 3 weeks ago. You will catch up with that on page 12. On page 14 this morning, landmark decision redefines sharing of marital wealth. Now, court says marriage does not automatically entitle either spouse to half of the property upon divorce. Judges say spouses must prove their input, whether through income, care work, or emotional support, to earn a fair share of property acquired during marriage. All right. It's not a 50-50 assets affair. You'll catch up with that on page 14. Let's move on and take a look at more stories on the nation. That lands us on the expert opinion. Why bodies cannot be used as collateral for bill payment. Now, hospitals operate under a professional and moral contract to care for the living and to treat the dead with reverence. Sentiments by Dr. Philip Cheptinga, that is on bills. You'll catch up with that opinion on page 18. On the Powering SMEs this morning, startup bets on educational toys. The learning aids help children grasp abstract concepts through touch and movement while having fun. You'll catch up with that on the DN2 article of today's Nation. Let's proceed with the expert opinion. Clear air on Raila's whereabouts. Now, I get the feeling that Mr. Onyango was just made to append his signature to a statement dictated by some rabble rouser. Sentiments by Masharia Gaido on page 19. You'll catch up with more insights on that. And now let's shift gears and take a look at the county news. We start with the Nakuru County. Blow for geothermal farm as locals say no to new projects. Public participation to be conducted before a drilling and exploration license is issued. National Environmental Complaints Committee orders fresh environmental assessment in Menengai. That story is augmented for you on page 21. Let's move to Mombasa County. Visitors on cruise ships now allowed to tour sites. International visitors will now be permitted to disembark from cruise ships docking at the port of Mombasa to explore Kenya's tourist sites. Tourism and Wildlife Cabinet Secretary Rebecca Miano has said that tourists will be allowed to visit national parks and the pristine beaches at the coast. The CS said that the government has resolved the issues around the Electronic Travel Authorization ETA. Previously, it was a requirement for international visitors to apply for an individual ETA on arrival at the port. Ms. Miano said that President William Ruto intervened in the matter and directed the Immigration Department to work with the cruise lines and process the documents before the tourists' arrival. Dr. Ruto gave the directive when he welcomed more than 2,000 tourists on a cruise ship at the port in February. That story is augmented for you on page 21. Now, let's move on and take a look at more county stories. Locals accuse Saga family of betrayal after court ruling. Anyone occupying or doing business on the land must now pay for their stay. Ruling has sparked fear of eviction among more than 12,000 residents who call the island home. In Kajiado County, wildlife attacks victims demand payment. Now, hundreds of victims, wildlife conflicts and their dependents have demanded payment of compensation claims submitted before a new digital claims system was introduced. By the time the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife unveiled a new technology-driven system, claims submitted between 2022 and 2024 using the previous manual system were still pending. The new system was piloted in May in Taita Taveta, Kajiado, Narok, Laikipia, Baringo, and Meru counties in a plan to improve the speed and transparency of claim processing. The system uses a digital platform, a USSD code, and community verification officers to collect and process claims, with payments set to be paid in 3 months through mobile money services. You'll catch up with that on page 22. And now let's take a look at what's happening in the international scene. U.S. federal employees face job losses on day 6 of shutdown. The longest shutdown lasted 35 days in 2018 to 2019 during Trump's first term in office. The Republican-led Senate was scheduled to vote again on dueling measures to fund federal agencies. That story is augmented for you on page 24. Briefly, in Cape Town, 3 parties declare merger ahead of local polls in 2026. 3 national political parties in South Africa have announced a merger ahead of next year's local elections. According to a joint statement issued on Sunday, the Good Party, Rise Mzansi, and Build One South Africa have united to form a new political party called United for Change to campaign in the 2026 local government elections under one shared banner. The Good Party and Rise Mzansi were among the 10 political parties that formed the government of the national unity after the 2024 general elections, when the ruling African National Congress failed to secure a majority. The new party will focus on 5 key priorities: capable and ethical leadership, local economic recovery, dignity through basic services, safety and justice, and digitization. You'll catch up with that on page 24. Let's take a look at business news now. State to control cooking gas prices under the new system. EPRA will set tariffs for handling and storage of the commodity. LPG imports under open tender system to firm government's grip on Fueki's cost. You'll catch up with that on page 25. The digit stands at 92%, which is the proportion of LPG imports that relied on facilities owned by African gas and oil companies. That is on page 25 for you. Briefly on the energy sector, a shift to cooking gas widens on cheaper suppliers. More households in Kenya are increasingly using cooking gas, buoyed by lower cost of the commodity following recent tax incentives by the government. Data from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority shows that the uptake of cooking gas in Kenyan homes rose by 14.1% to 443,932.46 tons in the year ended June 2025 from 388,970 tons posted in the previous year. All right. In courts, Guardian Bank cleared in 20-year shares dispute. The Court of Appeal has discharged Guardian Bank from a High Court order to pay 196 million shillings to former shareholders of the defunct Gildas International Bank, ending one of Kenya's long-running business acquisition disputes that began in 2005. All right, let's move into the field and take a look at the sporting actions. We start with crisis. Government ICC to meet wrangling cricket Kenya. Two factions fight for control of the national body. Sports Ministry wants to end the impasse in the CK board that is affecting game in the country. You'll catch up with that on page 34. Briefly, in the football sector, CAF announced 1.2 billion shillings net profit. The Confederation of African Football announced a profit in its latest financial statements, saying it has reversed several years of deficits. CAF reported a net profit of $9.48 million, an equivalent of 1.2 billion shillings, for the 2023-2024 financial year at its General Assembly on Monday, citing a strong increase in commercial revenues, the addition of new sponsors, and implementation of strict financial controls. Let's move to Kenyan Premier League. How Kenya Police are using ice therapy to stay ahead of the pack. The champions use chili treatment to help players recover. Club physiotherapist outlines how dreaded freezing bath is conducted on players after every game. You want to catch up with that story on page 35. Let's take a look at the cover page now. And it's all about the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Now, McCarthy, we won't grant the Elephants any favors. Harambee Stars leave for Bujumbura today for penultimate match. Kenya out of the running for World Cup spot, but group leaders Cote d'Ivoire must win to guarantee passage to North America. Now, also this morning, African qualifiers to provide 7 more World Cup finalists. Africa's group qualifiers for the 2026 World Cup conclude over the next week, providing 7 more finalists for the tournament in North America. With 2 rounds of group matches still to be played, Morocco and Tunisia are already guaranteed top place in their respective groups, while the identity of 7 other group winners, all of whom will earn an automatic place at the 2026 finals, will be finalized by next Tuesday. And with that story of African qualifiers, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum on this 7th day of August. Thank you so much for staying with us and for choosing to watch Younib TV, the best news television network in East and Central Africa. My name is Alphonce Ouma. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday ahead of you. Bye-bye for now.